I'm 100% sure that this already happened with you. You take some time to farm disc, and instead of dropping the right elemental disc for your 5th slot, you end up getting a penetration disc. And you thought to yourself, oh, that's not bad, right? Well, I don't want to bring bad news, and of course they are not that bad. Like, how would Hoyo simply add something useless in the game? There's simply no way Hoyo would do something like that. Alright, now sit down, because there's a lot to explain, especially if you still don't know how penetration works in this game. If you ever played Honkai Star Rail, then you know how defense shred effects are strong over there. Nicole can be somewhat compared to Pella, for example. Both units are 4-star or A rank, and they have defense shred effects on their kit. Anyway, back to the point, defense shred and penetration are not the same thing. Well, actually, they are the same thing, but the problem is that they are two different multipliers. Unlike all sorts of damage bonus that adds themselves on top of each other, defense shred and penetration are multiplicative. So let's say you're running Nicole and the classic penetration on disc 5 and a Perfect Electro 2-piece effect, which gives a total of 32% penetration. Well, if for some reason you ever thought that this would ignore 72% of the enemy defense, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, because you actually only be ignoring a total of 59.2% of the enemy defense. Now that you know how defense shred and penetration works, you must still be thinking something like, oh, but even if they are multiplicative, ignoring 60% of the enemy defense is really good. I thought this exact same thing, but remember that you're sacrificing 30% elemental damage and maybe a 2-piece effect as well. So here lies the question, is it really worth it? So we're going over 2 different characters in 3 different scenarios. We'll be running a test using Grace for anomaly test, and Zhu Yuan because she already saturates a lot of damage bonus numbers. All of these characters are going to be tested both on level 60, which is the maximum level for an agent, with their signature weapons. The enemy used for the test is a level 70 Dullahan, since this is the highest defense enemy in the current shield defense rotation. For all the tests, we're going to compare the total damage you'll be dealing when using a damage disc versus a penetration disc, and also matching them with Perfect Electro and a damage set. For these substats, we're going over a total of 20 distributed rolls. So Grace, it's flat attack ratio, anomaly proficiency, and penetration. 5 rolls in each of these stats. Zhu Yuan is going for attack ratio, crit rate, crit damage, and penetration. Also 5 rolls in each of these stats. I usually don't run penetration numbers on my crit-based calculations, but since Grace benefits from it when compared to crit rolls, I find it unfair to calculate penetration value without the same penetration for both characters. First, let's go with Grace. Since her signature weapon gives penetration, it's easier to hit some high penetration numbers. If we stack both Perfect Electro and penetration disc, we're going to hit a total of 56% penetration, which is close to what we get on Nicole, disc 5, and Puffer without a penetration weapon. Sadly, even stacking 56% penetration is going to offer you around 10% less damage than going for a damage disc and set. This can be easily explained due to the fact that Grace herself has no damage bonus. You get a shock damage increase, but that's all you're going to get in Grace. That's why Zhu Yuan was my second option for test. She saturates a lot of the damage multiplier, since you get a total of 80% damage on your shots against stunned enemies, and this is increased even further if you're running her signature weapon. Unlike Grace, her weapon is not going to provide penetration, so we are running only Puffer and a disc 5 for a total of 32% penetration, which, as expected, proves once again that penetration is not the way. Running full penetration on Zhu Yuan is going to render you with 5% less damage than going for a damage disc and a 2-piece damage set. So I thought to myself, but we're usually pairing Zhu Yuan with Nicole. Nicole can provide even further damage and defense shred, but I decided to run another test, now applying all of Nicole buffs, including her signature weapon and a swing jazz effect, because this way we can saturate Zhu Yuan damage multipliers to the maximum. And these are the results, which made me a bit disappointed once again. You can see that the difference is now smaller, it's close to 3% difference only, and we're still running a damage disc, by the way. By this point, we are probably going to get even higher numbers if we run attack over damage, but I decided to keep going for damage in order to maintain consistency through all my tests. So the next stop is going to be Grace once again, but now we are applying Nicole defense shred and all other possible bonuses. Now Grace can hit a total of 73% total penetration, but once again, The fact that Grace has no damage increase on her kit makes damage disc super valuable for her. Well, by this point, you probably know what I'm going to do. That's right, we're going for another test, with the last available unit that pairs perfectly with Grace. For the same reason we use Nicole with Zhu Yuan, we're now pairing Rina with Grace. Now, Grace has access to a 10% electric damage, another 20% from a full stacked Rina signature weapon, and also 30% penetration. If you pair all of this with Nicole, you can get a total of 91% defense penetration. There is simply no way that ignoring 91% of the enemy defense is going to be a bad thing. Or so I thought. At least now things are really close. Instead of 10% less damage, going for full penetration is going to give us only 3% less damage. But let's stop for a moment and think that this is a perfect scenario. This is a fully stacked Grace with a fully stacked Rina signature with Nicole effects which only last for 2 seconds after the energy field expires. And even with all of this, penetration is still worse than going for damage. So for the very last test, I also decided to stack Nicole and Rina with Zhu Yuan, just to check if penetration can get better than damage on Zhu Yuan. It's obvious that this isn't an optimal thing composition, since Zhu Yuan kind of wants a stunner, but this is only meant to test penetration efficiency over a damage disc. Now you probably already know what I'm going to say, but you are probably wrong, because for the very first time in this video, penetration finally beats damage, for a total of 0.2% only. Before we end this with the conclusion that penetration is trash, there's something really important here that we need to remember, but first you need to understand how the defense multiplier works. This is the formula currently available for us. The damage multiplier takes your level in order to get something called level coefficient and the remaining enemy defense after all your penetration is applied, and gives a number that can't go above 1. Let's focus on the points that we can interact here: your level and penetration. As I said before, all these calculations were made using level 60 stats. If instead we use a level 50, you're going to notice that the damage difference between penetration stats and damage is going to lower. If we pair Grace with Rina, even if Rina is not at her full potential, penetration will stack more than enough to deal more damage against a level 70 Dolohan. Here is a graph showing how penetration stacks and gets more value the more you have. Keep in mind that depending on the enemy defense, this can be a bit different. For example, the blue line here simulates a low defense enemy, which are usually these trash mobs that you find in shield defense. The red one is for a really high defense enemy, something that doesn't exist, at least for now, but as you can see, the lower the enemy defense, the lower the value for stacking penetration. So in conclusion, penetration is in a rough spot. You need to stack it enough to the point where it becomes something really valuable, but the only two support units that can interact with the enemy defense for now are Nicole and Rina. I wouldn't recommend you to destroy every single penetration disc, because we don't know how the game is going to scale later. There's also the possibility where we start to get more engine options that can interact with the enemy defense. As a quick reminder and a tip, don't forget that your level is going to increase the defense multiplier, meaning that increasing your level is your top priority to increase your damage when you unlock the next promotion tier. Also, don't forget that substats are really important. If you get a penetration disc with all the perfect substats, don't think twice and level it up. Unless you find a damage or attack disc with the exact same substats, chances are your penetration disc is going to give more damage. And even so, we don't know how long this is going to last. If you want to be future-proof and your character already has some source of damage increase, going for penetration isn't as bad as it seems. If you still have any question, feel free to drop a comment down below. Remember to give it a like if the content was helpful, and if you're looking for more ZZZ content, consider subscribing as well. As always, thanks for watching, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in my next video.